Robert Harrison had built his fortune in commercial real estate, transforming abandoned warehouses into thriving business centers across the Midwest. At 52, his silver-touched hair and measured demeanor spoke of a man who'd learned life's lessons through experience rather than books. But success had come with a price. His wife, Catherine, had passed away 3 years earlier after a long illness. Now it was just Robert and his daughter, 8-year-old Emma, navigating life in their spacious home overlooking the city. Emma was a bright child with copper-red hair that she wore in 2 careful braids, held together with ribbons her mother had chosen. She had her mother's warm eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and Catherine's gentle way of seeing the good in everyone. The loss of her mother had made Emma quieter, more observant. She watched the world with the careful attention of someone who'd learned that people you love can disappear. After Catherine's death, Robert had tried to manage everything himself, but running a business while raising a daughter alone proved overwhelming. That's when Maria Rodriguez came into their lives. Maria was 47, a woman who'd emigrated from Colombia 20 years earlier. She had kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled, dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, and hands that seemed to know instinctively how to comfort a grieving child. She wore her orange and white housekeeper's uniform with quiet dignity, moving through the Harrison home with gentle efficiency. But Maria was far more than a housekeeper. She became Emma's confidant, her after-school companion, the one who listened when the little girl needed to talk about her mother. Maria would sit with Emma at the kitchen table, helping with homework, sharing stories about her own childhood, teaching the girl to find joy in small moments, the way sunlight caught in a glass of water, or how bread dough felt beneath your hands. Robert noticed and was grateful. But he'd been lonely too, and perhaps that's why he'd been so quick to welcome Vanessa into their lives. Vanessa Morrison was 35, striking and polished. She had dark hair styled in an elegant updo, a wardrobe of bold colors, particularly red, which she wore like armor, and the confidence of someone who'd always gotten what she wanted. She and Robert had met at a charity gala 6 months ago. At first, things seemed promising. Vanessa was charming, attentive to Robert, full of plans for dinners and trips. But Maria noticed something Robert couldn't see, or perhaps didn't want to see. Vanessa's warmth vanished whenever Robert left the room. Her smile became something else entirely when she looked at Emma. The little girl would shrink back when Vanessa approached, pressing herself against walls or retreating to her room. Maria saw the child's shoulders tense whenever Vanessa's car pulled into the driveway. "She doesn't like me," Emma whispered to Maria one afternoon as they folded laundry together. "Why do you say that, mi corazón?" Maria asked gently. Emma's small fingers worked at a sock, matching it carefully to its pair. "She looks at me like I'm in the way." Maria's heart ached, but she chose her words carefully. "Your papa cares for you very much. You are never in the way." The afternoon that changed everything started ordinarily enough. Robert had a last-minute meeting downtown, one that couldn't be rescheduled. Vanessa had stopped by unexpectedly, letting herself in with the key Robert had recently given her. Maria was in the kitchen, preparing Emma's after-school snack, when she heard raised voices from the living room, her hand stilled on the apple she was slicing. That was Vanessa's voice, sharp and cold in a way Robert never heard, and Emma's small, frightened reply. Maria set down the knife and moved quickly through the house. The living room was golden with afternoon sun filtering through the heavy drapes. Emma stood near the coffee table, her small suitcase beside her, the one with cartoon characters that she'd picked out with her mother years ago. Tears streaked down her face behind her glasses. Vanessa loomed over the child, her red dress vivid against the neutral furnishings, yellow cleaning gloves on her hands from some task she'd obviously been performing. Her face was twisted with an ugliness that had nothing to do with her features. "You're nothing but a constant reminder," Vanessa was saying, her voice dripping with venom. "A sad little girl who can't let go. Your father needs to move on, and you're just dead weight holding him back." Emma's small body trembled. Maria watched as Vanessa reached out. Whether to grab the child or the suitcase, Maria would never know, because Maria stepped between them. She wasn't a large woman, but she stood firm, her hands gently on Emma's shoulders, pulling the child behind her protective stance. Maria's voice, when she spoke, was quiet but utterly unyielding. "You will not speak to this child that way, not in this house, not anywhere." Vanessa's shock lasted only a moment before fury replaced it. "How dare you? You're just the help. You don't tell me what to do." "I am the help," Maria agreed calmly. "I help this little girl feel safe. I help her remember that kindness exists in the world. I help her know that she matters." Behind her, Maria felt Emma's small hands clutch at her uniform. The child's face pressed against Maria's back, seeking shelter. "You think you're so special?" Vanessa's voice rose. "You're a maid. Robert will send you packing the moment I tell him about this." "Perhaps," Maria said softly, "but I can live with losing a job. Can you live with yourself, knowing you would harm a motherless child to get what you want?" The words hung in the air like a bell that couldn't be unrung. That's when the voice came from the doorway. "I'd like to hear the answer to that question myself." Robert stood in the entrance to the living room, his briefcase still in his hand. His meeting had been canceled. He'd come home early. The color drained from Vanessa's face. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Robert, this is all a misunderstanding." But Robert's eyes had moved past Vanessa to his daughter, to the tears on Emma's face, to the way she clung to Maria like a lifeline. Then to the suitcase, to Vanessa's guilty expression, to Maria's protective stance. A father knows. Perhaps he'd been willfully blind, wanting companionship so badly that he'd ignored the signs. But seeing his daughter's fear made everything crystalline clear. "I think you should leave," Robert said quietly. There was no anger in his voice, just a terrible sadness. "I'll have someone pack up anything you left here and send it to you. Robert, please." "Leave." The single word carried the weight of absolute finality. Vanessa looked at Maria with pure hatred, then at Emma with something worse, indifference. Then she grabbed her purse and walked out, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. The door closed. The house fell silent except for Emma's quiet sobbing. Robert crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees in front of his daughter. Emmy, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." The little girl released Maria and fell into her father's arms. "I tried to tell you, Daddy. I tried, but you seemed happy, and I didn't want to make you sad again." "Oh, sweetheart," Robert's voice cracked. "Your happiness is what matters. Nothing else. Do you understand?" Nothing else. He held his daughter, and over her head his eyes met Maria's. There were tears on his face, unashamed. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for protecting her when I failed to." Maria's own eyes glistened. "I love this child, Mr. Harrison. She is precious. Any fool could see that." Life settled into a new rhythm after that day. Robert made changes. He came home earlier. He turned down social invitations. That would take him away from Emma. He listened, truly listened, when his daughter spoke. And he saw Maria differently. Not as the help, but as the woman who'd shown more courage in one moment than many would in a lifetime. He increased her salary substantially. He made sure she knew she was valued, essential, family. 3 months later, on a quiet Saturday morning, Robert found Maria and Emma in the kitchen making pancakes together. Emma was laughing, her braids dusted with flour, her glasses sliding down her nose. Maria was teaching her one of her grandmother's recipes, their heads bent together over the mixing bowl. Robert stood in the doorway, watching this scene of simple domestic joy, and felt his heart settle in a way it hadn't since Catherine died. "Can I join you?" he asked. Emma looked up, her face bright. "Daddy, Maria's teaching me to make arepas. Did you know you can put cheese inside them?" "I did not know that," Robert said seriously, walking into the kitchen. "That sounds like something I definitely need to learn." Maria handed him an apron with a small smile. "Then you'd better wash your hands. We have work to do." Time passed the way it does. Sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly, but always forward. Emma grew taller, more confident. The shadows in her eyes from losing her mother never fully disappeared, but they were joined by new light, new joy, new certainty that she was loved and protected. Robert never seriously dated again. He was asked, occasionally, but he'd learned something important. The right person wouldn't make his daughter feel invisible. The right person would see Emma's worth immediately. Until then, he was content with the family he had, because that's what they'd become, a family. Not in the traditional sense, perhaps, but in the ways that mattered. Robert, Emma, and Maria, bound together not by blood or paperwork, but by the quiet, steady choice to care for one another day after day. On Emma's 18th birthday, a decade. After that fateful afternoon, the three of them sat together on the back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and amber. "I'm going to study social work," Emma announced. "I want to help kids who are going through tough times." Robert smiled, putting his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "Your mother would be so proud of you. I know I am." Emma leaned her head against her father's shoulder, then reached out to take Maria's hand. "I learned from the best. Both of you taught me what it means to stand up for people, to see what matters." Maria squeezed the young woman's hand, her eyes bright with tears of joy. "You are always going to be exactly who you are, mi amor. We just had the privilege of watching you become her." The sun dipped lower, and the three of them sat in comfortable silence, bound together by love and by one extraordinary act of courage that had changed all their lives. Because that's what kindness does. It doesn't always announce itself with grand gestures. Sometimes it's simply a woman in an orange uniform, stepping between a child and cruelty, saying with her actions what words could never fully express: "You matter. You are worth protecting. You are loved." And that makes all the difference.